Yo, what up, Knicks Nation? Welcome back to another Game of the Week preview. You already know what it is. Knicks made it past the Detroit Pistons. Now we get the matchup we've been waiting for years, people, for years. We get that matchup between the New York Knicks and the Boston Celtics. And who better to help preview this game? None other than my guy, Bobby Manning, returning. So fitting, man, that we had a discussion earlier this year. Now these teams get to meet up, so we're going to break it all down. Make sure you hit that thumbs up button for your boys. Make sure to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already done so. Make sure to support our sponsor, Underdog Fantasy. Use that promo code KFTV to get up to $1,000 in instant bonus cash and a free pick. And don't forget to go to the watch party at the Ainsworth on Monday, 5:30 sharp. Doors going to open. You already know what it is. It's going to be a vibe over there. Bobby, my man, how you been, bro? How you feeling?
I'm feeling good. I'm excited for this. I'm sure we said earlier in the year this was going to happen. So I don't think either of us are surprised that they're meeting up in round two, that they're going to have a lot of stakes here for both sides. And it's going to be fun. And like you said, it's been since 2013, and that was a long time ago. That was KG, that was Pierce, that was Melo. It was a much different time. Knicks were the better team then. Celtics are the better team now. But there's still going to be a lot of hype on both sides. I was saying that in our pod, the Garden Report there. Like, this is going to have a lot of energy, electricity around it. I'm interested to see how many fans invade the opposing arena. I know you'll be invading TD Garden on game one. So this is going to be fun. Now, how good of a series is this going to be? That's what we're going to debate here.
That is surely what we're going to debate. And look, I didn't give you the proper introduction. First of all, let me just say, Bobby over here, all right, he covers the Celtics for Celtics CLNS, and you can go find him over at the Garden Report, as he just mentioned. So make sure you go tap in over there to go get that full Knicks Celtics coverage too. All right, this man's a full on reporter. He gets the inside scoop on the team. Okay, but look, how good of a series is it going to be, man? If we go by the regular season, it should lead me to be depressed. But I don't know,
Yeah.
man. The last game of the regular season, I know Jaylen Brown was dealing with the knee injury. All right. I know some guys were out, but something about that gives me a little bit more hope that this time will be like we'll get some competition, man. How it goes, we'll give our predictions at the end, but yeah, I have a little bit of hope that it'll be a little bit more competitive than what we saw for the first three games of the regular season. But if it's anything like that, man, it's going to be a tough watch, man. Absolute tough watch.
Yeah, and I heard the Knicks fans say it all year. I was skeptical of it. Mitchell Robinson, when he's back, things are going to be different. And it was in that last game there. And you mentioned the Jalen piece, which is important. He went out in the third quarter, didn't come back in that game. Celtics still, tie the game late, force overtime, win overtime 12-10, and take the series sweep. But there's a lot more hope in that game between Brunson's performance. You saw Brunson in the last series and what he did. You should definitely take some stock in that, carry that over to the next round and have some hope on that front. Towns was great last series. He torched Tatum in that last game when they tried to defend Towns with Tatum there. So there's definitely some hope you can look at in that last game. And the big one's Robinson. They can play a little bigger. They can
Mm-hmm.
move Towns away from the five, where he really struggled against Boston defensively. You can have some rim protection out there behind Brunson and whatever else ends up going wrong on the perimeter there defensively. So there's a lot to like there, but still, Celtics able to mostly get whatever they want offensively in this series throughout the year. And the first two games were massive blowouts. Third game was a rock fight. Celtics still figured out a way to win that one. And then even in the fourth game, where the Knicks played their best, Celtics still took it late. Porzingis hitting a half court shot pretty much there over Brunson, and he hit 8 threes in that game. Holiday was really good in this matchup throughout the year. Tatum was amazing. Guys off the bench contributed for Boston too. It's so crazy to think about because we said it coming into this year, Alex. The Knicks built this roster to compete with the Celtics,
Mm-hmm.
and they just didn't compete with the Celtics during the year.
Yeah, and I think the biggest thing for the Knicks too is, getting a little bit of relief, right? Is that the bench for the Knicks has been woeful, and especially if
Yep.
you watch the first series against Detroit, McBride was almost unplayable. Campaign outside of game one, couldn't really play him. He's not setting up that second unit. Mitchell Robinson was a bright spot outside of, I think it was game five where he was dealing with an illness. It's either four or five. I can't remember right now.
I didn't see much Landry Shamet.
Nope, he's not out there either. So it's gone from what would be like during the regular season 9-man rotation down to 6.5. So that's going to be tough against the Celtics, considering that you have plentiful depth, right? I mean, outside of the starting five, where you have Drew, Derek White, Brown, Tatum, and then you got KP out there. You got Horford. You got Pritchard on the bench. You got Hauser. You guys got a lot of guys on that bench that can actually be inserted and cause some damage. And I mean, even Luke Cornett, I'll give him some props there too, because even in that last matchup, he was doing his thing. And so, with a legitimate 9 that you guys can run out there, this is a series where Tibbs is going to have to trust the bench. But that's the big thing. Does he trust the bench enough? He'd even trust them against the Detroit Pistons, where theoretically you should have had a little bit more wiggle room there, considering if you look at these rosters on paper, right? Like you look at the Knicks, you look at the Pistons, it's Cade and a lot of role players, and then you look at the Knicks roster, and you're like, that team should have easily handled the Pistons, and yet they struggled a little bit. So this is where I feel like if we're talking about what's going to be the turning point for this series, is that Tatum, Brown, all those guys are going to come in rested, and the Knicks starters are going to have to be able to just battle through 40 minutes on a regular basis if they're going to keep up with the Celtics, which that's a tall order, man, especially for how talented the Celtics are.
Yeah, and I've always gone back and forth those minutes things. I'm sure you guys have too a million
Oh,
times
you're a
about what
book
the
man, Tom
impact of that
Thibodeau.
is
It's a conversation every year, every second. Down,
every
it
day.
never stops.
Right. So I don't know what the impact of that will be. Obviously, they come into the series healthy. I know Brunson looked banged up at times, but still putting up 30 plus pretty much every game. So not too much concern there. I'll be interested to see how the Celtics are coming into this one, specifically Holiday. Practiced the last 2 days, didn't play the last 3 games of that last series. So I'd still say up in the air a little bit for game one at least. But trending in the right direction toward him at least being available. But those hamstring injuries nag a little bit. And Tatum's got the wrist, Brown's got the knee. Seems like they both went in a better direction as that series progressed. But something to watch for because it does feel like the Knicks are maybe just a little bit healthier to start this series than the Celtics are. And, those are little advantages you have to steal if you're New York because I think on paper, you look at this thing, it's going to be tough. Brunson's going to get attacked. Towns is going to get attacked. It's not a great defensive team that New York rolled out there throughout the season. But OG was great defending Tatum and Brown. If you held them to 6 to 25, Bridges can compete defensively out there too. And the bigger lineup to me, when you talk about Thibodeau and the flexibility and using the bench and all that sort of stuff, you want to see him go there in this series. You want to see him use that size. You want to see him almost treat Robinson like a starter. And maybe they start Robinson in this series if things go wrong early. I think that's definitely an adjustment you look at if you're them. And I think that's how you challenge a smaller Celtics lineup because they're obviously, if they're healthy, going to start Tatum Brown, Porzingis at center, Holiday and White. So you go double big against that. That maybe puts Boston in a little bit of an uncomfortable position there, especially with the offensive rebounding. So off the bat, just looking at this series from afar, I don't see it being a super competitive one,
Mm.
but there are some ways the Knicks can creep into this one, challenge. Maybe some things change as the series goes on. Injuries are the developments there, and you work your way into a tougher 5, 6, 7 game series. But right now, everyone's available, both sides fully loaded. I feel really good about the Celtics in this one.
So let me ask you this, because you brought up injuries twice now, and I know Jaylen Brown was dealing with a knee injury. I know Drew Holiday missed some time too, and I know from what you said he was back at practice today. So what's the status on both of those guys right now? Because you talked about health. Knicks guys outside of Jalen Brunson, who almost every single game was nursing that ankle injury that he dealt with after playing the Lakers earlier this season. He's still out there, he's still competing. I mean, he dropped 40 points in a closeout game, so the ankle can't be that bad to go out there and go do that. But what does it look like from the Celtics, especially after playing Orlando?
Yeah, for Brown going into it, I think it's pain tolerance. I think it has been going back to the regular season, and he leaves that game against New York, rests the final three, gets a shot, looks much better coming back for the start of the first round there. And game two, Tatum misses against Orlando, and Brown just had a Tatum-esque game, stepping right into his shoes there, playing 41 minutes. The series overall, he shot well, had good moments, and then there'll be halves, there'll be quarters, maybe a couple plays where he looks a little limited physically, and he's certainly not flying up and down the floor and dunking the way he usually was. So with Brown, I think it's less is he going to miss a game and more is he going to be himself. especially as the series progresses. And this is going to be an every other day sort of series, I think, after the gap between 2 and 3. So this could be a longer series. This could be a more strenuous series potentially here if you do have to play more minutes to go up against how many minutes the Knicks starters are going to play. So you just see how that develops over the course of a series. He was on the injury report for the last 3 games of that Magic series, but you knew he was going to play,
Hmm.
and he ended up playing pretty well through it. So I feel good about him going in. With Holiday, again, I feel good that he was at practice. I don't know where he suffered that injury. I don't know the grade. I don't know how severe it was. But it was severe enough to hold him out 3 games late in that series. Was that being ultra cautious? Was that saying this is the start of a run? This is in the finals. We're gonna, ease him into the second round there. That might be what this is. But again, hamstrings are tricky, especially for a 34-year-old. And he has a vital role in this series, right? He'll probably cover Towns some. He'll
Hmm.
probably be the starting point at Brunson. He was for much of the year in those matchups. And he shot really well. He's a guy who can attack Brunson himself a little bit because Brunson's probably going to guard him out of all the options on the Celtics here. So I just said it on my show. He's the Celtics X factor in this series to me.
Mm.
Holiday is, especially because the Knicks offense is dynamic. You're going to need a guy like him who can guard multiple positions and more so just, conduct the defense, right? He's the guy telling them when to go in the zone if that's the best option. He's the guy telling them to press if that's the best thing to do in a situation. He's their quarterback out there. So they missed him a lot. They outscored the Magic by 19 points per 100 when he was on the floor in that series. And I think the margin was like 4 when he was out. So it was a big difference in that series. Magic won a game and were much more competitive in the next two once he went down.
Salute to Knicks Nation. Thank you all for tuning in for another game of the week preview. With me on the other side is my guy, Bobby Manning. He covers the Celtics and the NBA for Celtics CLNS and CLNS Media. And he's also over at the Garden Report. That's where you go. Make sure to go check out the show over there. All right. Make sure to hit that thumbs up button for your boys. Make sure to subscribe to the channel. You talk about Holiday being the Celtics X factor, and I can totally see that, regardless of injury, just because he's so versatile at that position, right? And as you mentioned, he can guard Towns. Prior to even the Towns trade, we've seen him guard Julius when he was on this team, and he gives bigger, like bigs, just a he gives him a difficult time because one, he can get under, right? And just like he gets
Yep.
more leverage. Two, he's actually deceptively strong for the guard position when you're starting to guard bigs. And so for Towns, that this is where like I understand him as the X factor because if you're going to put him on Towns, is Towns going to then say, "Hey, let me go shoot some threes and just shoot over him"? Is that how that's how I would like it to see him play? Just
Yeah.
because use your height and doing that, and that's what the Knicks failed to do in the first couple of matchups, right? And he failed to be aggressive in doing that. And what I know that the Celtics like to do is like Tom Thibodeau, his style, yo, work the paint, go attack the paint, and every time they put Drew on him, it's like, oh, let me just go down low since I'm bigger than him and let me go get an easier shot,
Try to
which,
overpower him. Yeah.
yeah. And so that plays to what the Celtics want. It's like, all right, you take twos, we'll continue to take threes because you already know Celtics will jack up as many threes as possible. And so I feel like in this matchup, if that's what Drew Holiday is going to do, which not no surprise that that's probably the game plan, Knicks need to be a little bit more savvy and just figure out, all right, how do we keep Towns on the perimeter and get him putting up threes
It's such a great point. Yeah. And
because once they do that, then it'll open up the lanes for the Knicks. And that's the other issue is that by doing that, it closes the lanes.
yeah, and I pulled up the numbers and it blew my mind when I saw it because it was the most glaring stat I saw of all the stats I looked at from the regular season in this series is that Towns averaged 2 3-pointers a game against the Celtics in this matchup. He couldn't find threes, and that's his game at this point in his career at the very least, is getting those threes up and hitting them at a high rate. He only averaged like what 4 or 5 per game during the year. It's not like he was taking 10, but that's
Hmm.
pretty much cutting his attempts in half there and
Yep.
not even giving him opportunities to get those extra points out there. And I know there's a team that was bottom 10 in 3-point attempts, and in that matchup specifically, Celtics really dominated the 3-point attempt battle over them, and that's an easy stat for them to win most nights. The Magic took it away from them, and you saw the impact of that. So, the Knicks probably aren't going to be able to take away the three from Boston. So they have to find ways to get him up. And that's going to be on Brunson, stepping around some screens and taking those. It's going to be on Towns, being aggressive and quick with those when he gets the opportunities and not trying to overpower a guy and post him up and back him down from the 3-point line and in there. And I think you saw a lot of that on the tape there. Celtics going to switch him. They're going to give up size there. And like
Mhm.
you said, I thought the whole story of that last game, Towns is 34, but it was all twos. It was all tough twos. It was all flip shots, hook shots, and he was amazing. I thought he really torched Tatum in that game. But they kept him off the 3-point line, and that's a win for them. And I think beyond that, that's obviously the game plan. But I also think the game plan for the Celtics is going to be generally let Brunson get his. Let Towns get his. Those guys both score 20, 30. That's fine. Just don't let anyone else go off. And when you look at the production from the other guys across the board in this matchup, you didn't see anything from OG. You didn't see much from Bridges. Hart was pretty limited. So those guys have to contribute if they're going to be able to win a shootout, which I think is probably how the Knicks are going to have to win these games is by scoring more points than the Celtics, obviously.
Absolutely. I agree. And that's the whole point of like why it was put together. It's like, hey, we need offense. And when you watch the Knicks over the past couple of seasons, how they played, it's like you get enough offense from Brunson, and everybody else has been pretty spotty. Outside of OG last year against even for both Philly and against the Pacers, he was probably the second best guy who could score on that team next to Deuce McBride. And to your point, yeah, everyone's gonna have to just shoot very well this series, and the Knicks have yet to do that against the Celtics, as you point out during the year. I mean, they shot 42%. Was it? No, sorry, they shot decently. They shot 47% from the field, but downtown is where they struggled a little bit. They shot 35%, which, not necessarily, it's not close to what their average can be. They're a great 3-point shooting team from a percentage standpoint, but they need to put up more than what they've currently done. And it's funny that you talked about Josh Hart because that's going to be my X factor for this series because
Interesting.
every time I've watched him play against the Celtics, he struggles because one, the mismatch of like who he has to guard, right? And the last one, it was against Jaylen Brown. I know they just circle him around. Sometimes he gets a Derek White assignment, and it just mixes and matches. But to me, he's the guy that can really change things this series because we know he likes to get downhill and attack. He doesn't really get that much going in transition against the Celtics just because they're always good at getting back in transition and stopping those type of plays. But then 3-point percentage wise, Josh, especially during the beginning of the year, he was very confident. Shot a 37.5% rate from downtown on like 3 to 4 attempts per game. But I'm looking at the numbers here throughout the entire 4 games that he's played against the Celtics. He's averaging 11% from downtown and on only a little over 2 attempts per game. And so we need more than that from Josh. Like he needs
Yeah,
to be
and
aggressive
guess
when he's
what?
open,
If that's what he's going to do, they're going to ignore him. They're going to put Porzingis on him. They're going to have Porzingis standing at the rim
which I expect
defensively,
from the
and
jump.
yeah, I think that's going to be the game plan. And, Jalen did get asked about that today. He said, yeah, that's probably how we'll start this thing. It's not necessarily how we'll defend the whole series, but that is what they did during the year. And, one thing I'll give Hart is he's not one of those guys who's just going to stand out there and keep launching. Like he would dribble in, he would get to the floater, he would get to, some of those in between shots and tough finishes. But you said it with Towns. Like those are the shots the Celtics want them taking. And they're more than happy to take it sometimes, and they're good at it. So, you give that to Brunson, you give that to Hart, you give that to Towns. Those guys are definitely tough 2-point shot makers. But if the Celtics are putting up 53s the other way, it just becomes such a tough math battle. So they got to get to the free throw line. The offensive rebounding's big. That's why I keep looking at Robinson and Hart too, right? He's a
hmm
guy that can get in there and make that stuff happen too. They're probably going to trade minutes a little bit if they go to more Robinson, but uh, they got to find some ways to narrow the gap with the shooting because the shooting effective field goal was like 61 to 53 in this matchup during the year. Now, is that going to happen here? Probably not. You know, tougher defense and, there's just more attention to detail, I'm sure, over the course of a series and more adjustments and all that different kind of stuff. But they're probably going to lose that battle. So they got to win the offensive glass, got to win the free throws. They got to force turnovers. They really didn't turn the Celtics over much in
hmm
this matchup throughout the year, but they did force 15 in that last game. So listen, last game, you look at it, Robinson did his thing. You forced turnovers. Brunson had a huge game. There's a lot of really good stuff in that last game of the year. Did it mean a ton for Boston? No. So maybe that factors into why they weren't as good in that game. But it's the only thing you can look at from the regular season and say, that's what it's going to look like for the Knicks. And to me, it is going to have to be probably Robinson starting eventually, or at least playing a lot more than he did in round one. It's probably going to have to be figuring out ways to get Towns some shots and not just having Brunson shoot 30 shots, which they'll allow him to do if that's what he wants to do.
You
And
do you,
so there's some paths to competitiveness here, but it's going to be really hard.
You think so? Like, I want Mitchell Robinson starting. I think, you got to get a little wonky when you start playing the Celtics just because what we did, we already saw during the regular season, as you pointed out, it hasn't worked. All right. Like, at our best, when Robinson was back, he didn't play much. He was still on a minutes restriction, but like, that was damn near perfect. And Celtics still won in OT with, Jalen Brown, who didn't even play essentially the second half. So, my big thing is like, yes, I want Mitch to play because I know he's going to get the offensive boards. I know he's going to deter guys from driving the lane. But my big thing too, like the only thing that conflicts me with wanting that is that the Celtics play a true five out, and he's not good at guarding the five out. You know what I mean?
Right.
So that's like the biggest thing. It's like you want your rim protector there, but unless Tibbs ran a zone, it's just like to me, it's like that's like the biggest conundrum for me where if he ran his own, I could say, all right, I could see this working if the guys were just able to shift over to wherever the ball was being swung. But if you're going to be playing man, which Tibbs likes to run, and then if you're going to be playing drop, which also Tibbs likes to run,
The
it's
drop's a killer.
yeah, it's against this team. It's just that's not what it is. And I know he's been last series. He said he had OG on Cade, and they do like some stunts. They blitz. They did a lot of different like they showed a lot just to get the ball out of Cade's hands. This is not necessarily the team you want to do that with, just because everyone's a playmaker, everyone's a shooter, everyone can defend. It's this is like why this is a very fascinating matchup for the Knicks because either way, if they win or lose the series, you'll learn a lot more about this team and how they should move moving forward. But getting back to the whole Mitchell Robinson thing, does any part of that think like does that even going to work? Like when you like you're talking about saying, hey, it's going to help get offensive boards, but like think about the five out system that the Celtics run. Do you think he was even going to make that much of an impact?
I don't love it, right? Because I do like Tatum around the screens pulling up. I saw him doing it at practice today. He nailed the shot at one point and doing that kind of action that you're probably going to see against a drop. And that's comfortable for him. That's comfortable for a lot of guys on this team. And so you're just giving up threes there if you're doing that, if you're New York. And it's good to take away the rim and the drive and kick game and all that. But it's just something Boston's comfortable playing against. And then putting two on the ball, which I saw on the tape too in this matchup, that's something Boston's comfortable. And that opens up the Hausers and the Whites of the world and gets those guys going. So you look at what the Magic did, and I know the Knicks don't have the Magic's personnel, so it's hard to do this, but they were successful in switching everything, defending Tatum and Brown straight up, letting those guys get theirs, right? What we just talked about with the Knicks, and shutting down everybody else. And the Magic did that perfectly. It's unreal what the Magic did defensively last series against Boston. It's the best
Hmm.
defense I've seen any team play against the Celtics over the last 2 years. And I know it was a 5 game series. It was about as tough of a 5 games as you'll ever see. So if I'm the Knicks, I'm looking at what the Magic did, and I know it's not the same personnel, but I'm trying to emulate some of that stuff. Like, don't double team Tatum often. Don't let him just pass out to those shooters. Don't be dropping off him around screens. You got to be able to switch a little bit and compete. And they're not going to switch Robinson every time, right? But there were some competitive switches for him in that last game. He's a guy that can show a little bit on the ball and then recover to the rim. So like they're gonna have to get creative with the coverages here because you can't just leave a simple read for the Celtics, whether it's a shot or a pass. Like they're gonna make that happen. And when the ball just starts flying around against rotations, that's when it's game over and they're shooting 53s and making 25 of them. So yeah, they're going to have to get really creative defensively. I think forcing turnovers is going to be super important for them. It's hard to do against Boston, but they're just going to have to do it. And then the size, they got to win the position battle. And that's, I think, something they can do. Robinson's great on the offensive glass. Town should be able to impact that part of the game. Like that really is their big road to narrowing the gap against this team is getting a lot of offensive rebounding, win that battle, force more turnovers, and just try to get that math advantage back because they're just not going to win the 3 point battle. It's just not going to happen.
So is that the big thing you would say you're looking out for? Is like looking out for the rebounding battle? Do you think? Because I said this in the last series against the Pistons that whoever wins the rebounding battle is most likely winning the game. And boy, did that series just decide to say absolutely not because Knicks were losing the rebounding battle more than that. I think they only won one game in the rebounding battle, and that
That's
game
the
they
tricky
actually
thing.
lost. And so, is that what you're looking at in this series? Do you think the rebounding battle is going to be that huge, considering that the Celtics are one of the better shooting teams just in general? Because you look at them right now in the playoffs, they're fifth, right? During the regular season, they ranked. What was it? They ranked. Give me a second as I find it up.
First in attempts, you already know that.
Yeah, I know it's first in attempts. There's no question about that. They will consistently put up shots. So they're middle of the pack. They shot 46% from the field, but I also know that they shoot a lot of threes, so that percentage is going to drop.
Yeah.
Um, but do you think, like, I guess this is where the confusion is like, yeah, the rebounding battle helps, but I guess if the Celtics are shooting a lot of threes, even though they make them a lot, do you think that's where the battleground is going to be for this matchup?
They put a lot of importance on it, and I understand why, because it puts pressure on the defense beyond even the threes, because then you get a rebound back, you're kicking out for another three. Even if you're shooting poorly from three, it gives you some extra opportunities. So they're going to do it. Like they do it well. They're not one of the best offensive rebounding teams you'll ever see, but they get the key ones, they get the timely ones. And the Knicks, I think, have the personnel, the ability to win that battle. And I've seen in stretches in this matchup this year them give the Celtics some trouble on the boards. Like Porzingis, he'll start at center in this series. Not the best defensive rebounder. Tatum and Brown, great for their positions, but they're not bigs. So there's some opportunity out there for Towns and Robinson to really dominate the offensive rebounding battle in this matchup. And, I think they played 5 minutes together in that last game. They had a 36% offensive rebounding percentage during the year together, which is pretty high. So I just want to see more of those two out there together. And I think it fixes a lot of problems for them. I think if Robinson can play well, because he's probably better at the five against what the Celtics are doing than Towns is. And to me, he gives you that offensive rebound and counter that I think is going to be the biggest way the Knicks can get an advantage in the series, is being able to put back a lot of their misses, being able to really dominate the glass in there. And he's done that in the past against them. Like I can remember a lot of games in the past where he made a big difference by getting 6, 7 offensive rebounds in a game. And, I was just asking this, we had Christian Winfield on. I was like, can he play 30 minutes? And I don't know if we know that, because that would be big. If he gave you like 25, 30 great minutes, that changes things a lot here. But is it more like 15, 20 minutes off the bench, like it's looked like in a lot of these games? It's probably not as impactful. So that's why he's my X factor. I think Hart's a good one, but Robinson to me is the guy who can actually change things in this matchup compared to what we saw during the year.
You know, to your point, like he's only played 30 minutes once, and it's when Cat was missing for a regular season game. I don't expect Tibbs to go far from what the starting five is. And just because we haven't even seen a lot of the two big lineup out there with Cat and Robinson, it's been so sparingly. Now, when they do play,
I
a
don't
lot
get
of the
it.
a lot I know I don't get it either, and I want that. I feel like it helps because one, it's not what I think. I've seen it, right? We saw what happened out in Minnesota when we put Cat at the four and you had Rudy Gobert there, and it's like get Cat away from the from being your rim protector and put Mitch out there, and it just changes everything. And so look, I would like to see Mitchell Robinson get those opportunities to be in that starting rotation. I've been asking for it. I asked for it during this series. I thought he would be a huge impact, and he was. Even in the sparing minutes that he played against Detroit, we look at the Brunson shot, right? That he just, he puts Asar Thompson on skates. But prior to that, it's Mitchell Robinson deterring Cade from even getting a good look for a layup in transition. And so I would like to see Mitch do that. To me, it just comes back to the concern of playing a true five-out team. And then for me, it's with Mitch is that offensively, are you going to actually find him for the lobs and actually utilize him? Because instead of
Right.
just putting putbacks, like he needs to be involved in some way where you have to honor him. And if you're not getting him lobs, which was very rare in the first matchup, then I just feel like he's going to go to the wayside.
And I get it, right? Because then Towns is more standing in the corner. He's not in as many screening actions and all that. So it does lower Towns' offensive ceiling a little bit. You're going too big there. I'm sure that's why they don't do it as much. Maybe Robinson's health too and the amount of minutes he can play. I don't know why they don't go to it as much, But I do think it's just a good different look for them. And obviously they're gonna play that card over the course of a series here. And I wouldn't be stunned if Robinson ends up starting a game in this series. So we're not gonna get to the end of however many games the series lasts and say, oh, they didn't use Robinson enough. Like that's gonna happen.
You think it's going to
But
happen? Let me ask you this question, since I know you cover the Celtics and I know you cover the league as a whole. And w- what has been your thoughts about the Knicks like during the regular season? Because I hear it all the time. Tom Thibodeau this, Tom Thibodeau that. What are your thoughts about Tibbs leading this team and what you've seen from the Knicks overall?
they've left a lot to be desired. They really have. Like even that first round series, and I'm a massive Pistons guy. I love that team. I think I wasn't surprised they competed to the level they did in that series. But yeah, up 11 at the start of the fourth to squander it the way they did, and then the series extending to the degree it did, and really they should have lost the game four with the Hardaway thing there. So, they were in a position where they maybe could have lost that series, or at least went seven, as it looked like it should have there a couple different times. So, I thought that was a disappointment coming out of that one and having to extend the way it did. And then specifically the Celtics Knicks matchups during the year. And I'm not a blame the coach guy, but it was glaring to me just how much of an edge Joe had on Thibodeau. And the biggest moment by far, up three in that fourth game we've talked about here, you have the perfect opportunity to foul there
And you
up
don't foul.
three,
I
and
knew you were
they
gonna
don't
bring that up.
foul.
Oh my God.
Just a glaring mistake. And that's one of those ones, there's always a big coaching mistake where you're just like, wow, that was the moment right there where you just saw that coach didn't have it. And that was it to me. Like how not only not fouling, but just leaving him on an island. And I know OG had his number for a lot of the year and it was very well equipped to guard him in that spot. But he's just on an island. Tatum gets into that step back. No one else is there to help. And he hits a clean look from three to force overtime. And it's like, wow, that's just bad coaching right there. And I think there's been opportunities probably to utilize Bridges better. I don't think he's been as involved as you would have liked to have seen coming over from Brooklyn. The lineup adjustments, the double big stuff we're talking about here. There's a million things I can rattle off, along with the defensive disappointment that they've been this year. That does point to coaching a little bit. And, listen, these guys have to perform, but
For
he puts
sure.
a lot of pressure on them with the minutes too. And I know that's been something that they've mentioned at times this year and has become a little bit of a thing is the amount of minutes that they've had a log here and how they haven't developed the bench consistently through the course of this year. So it's tough, right? Because he built this team into what it is, and they were just so incompetent for so many years, and he's made them competent. But then the roster changes so much over the summer, and it's like, is he the right coach for this group? It doesn't seem like it. And listen, I think he's handled it well. I think he's being himself. I don't think he looks like a coach who's under a ton of pressure. I think he's just being him. But that might not be what this team needs. And I've heard it from Knicks fans too throughout this year. They just haven't loved this team. Like I've never heard it from the Knicks fans chirping in my ear saying, "Oh, we got you. We're coming for you." Even going into the series, I'm not hearing a lot of Knicks fans saying, "Look out." And I think a lot of that goes back to the lack of confidence in the coach because it's not this roster, right? And it blows my mind because, like I said at the top of the show, this was a team built to compete with Boston. And maybe you could have said Towns wasn't the best fit in that, but I still think, you guys have to look at that trade and say that was a good trade. Even though you gave up some good pieces and, it was tough to lose a couple of those guys. It was a good trade because of the year Towns had. And to be in a position where you're worse off to compete with Boston, like that roster, I know it has some holes, but it shouldn't have been a 4-0 loss, two blowouts, three maybe even kind of regular season series between these two teams. They're much closer than that. Like this is not like a
Hmm.
two versus a seven kind of series, but that's what it looked like during the year. I mean, and I go into the series saying this might be easier than that Orlando series. And
Hmm.
that should not be with the talent level. When you look at the Magic's talent versus what the Knicks have on their roster, I should not be feeling that way. And I don't know where else to look but the coach because for as a someone to blame for that.
Yeah, and I think you hit it right on the head. And a lot of fans have had their qualms about this team just because of the underperformance. And keep in mind they won 51 games, right? And they're still like,
They were great.
they were great. Like they're third. They're third in the East. They won 51 games. You
It's
made it
the
past
0 and
Detroit.
10 that
It's the
killed
0 and 10,
everybody.
but it's also, as you mentioned, the utilization on this roster. I agree with like the use of Mikal Bridges. I'm like, why is he not an initiator at times? Why is he not getting the opportunity to lead the second unit and just get more into a groove? Why are we leaving him as a guy that's just a 3-and-D player where he showed out in Brooklyn he could be a little bit more than that? Why aren't we utilizing him like that? And we even saw that when Brunson was out, he's more than capable of just playing at that level. Even when we see OG's playing at that type of level too, where you don't have Brunson. Now the ball is being shared amongst all the high end role players, even with Karl Anthony Towns, who's a star on this team. And you're like, okay, this should translate once Brunson comes back, and then it doesn't. And then when you see a lot of ISO basketball and you just watch all these games, even against the Pistons, right? And you're starting to watch and you're breaking this down, and you're like, in the game six where it was a brilliant performance to open up that game. I'm like, wow, that's the team I remember at the beginning of the season where they're just sharing the rock, finding the cutters, getting all those easy shots that they're more than capable of. That looks like the number one offense that we saw at that time. And then it goes a complete 180 in that second quarter, not half, quarter, right?
Yep.
Where the defense just falls apart. The offense looks stagnant. There's a little bit too much ISO basketball. I'm like, why aren't we calling a timeout? Why aren't we adjusting? Why aren't we designing plays for somebody to get somebody else open, better looks? And to me, it's like that's where it goes back to the coach. And that's where I'm like, this series, man, to me is going to be a real make or break for this team in the sense of it's got to be competitive. Like it truly has to be competitive. Like you can't just
Yep.
go out there and go get dog walked. Because I agree with you, this team does have the talent, but the talent is not being displayed where you're like, oh, we made all these trades. We're competing with. We should be competing with Boston. We're not talking about like 5, 8 point loss games. We're talking about getting shellacked regularly, and that
Oh,
to me,
giving up 130 on opening night, and it
yeah.
was embarrassing at times.
And then to me, it's like that comes down to how are you being prepared and how are we working to this team's strength, which is primarily being an offensive team. And it doesn't look like since January, this team has gone down in offensive production. And so you look at the offensive rating, it's not the same as it was at the beginning of the season. And now you could say in December they had an easier schedule, a lot of easier matchups. You talk about playing Orlando without Paolo, then Franz. You're talking about some teams that were really in the dumps, even the Hornets. And even the Hornets gave them some difficult times. So I'm like, this is where I look at the entirety of the roster and why I understand Knicks fans, even going into this matchup, that they have their concerns. And some of them are going to be, bullish and brash still. Like there's some, even on the post game, like we got this. We can compete with the Celtics. And, I'm
It's
going
gonna
to
be one of
take,
those. It's gonna be like we can compete, I think.
yeah, exactly. Compete. But it's like, even like I'm going to go on this one being a little bit more optimistic based on how they finished against Boston during the regular season and saying, all right, we got Jalen Brunson. Some magic can happen potentially in these games. I don't know, right?
It's gonna
And
be a
that's how I'm
lot on
looking at
his
it.
shoulders. Yeah, and I think the Celtics like that. I think they like the idea of him going out there and taking all the shots, doing everything, playing under pressure. They're going to put him under pressure on defense too, right? So they're going to really make him work and making him exert himself. And I know he's dealing with something. You saw it in those games, him, you know, clenching his teeth when he goes to the ground and getting back up, and he's still scoring his 30, like I said. But it's going to be a lot of pressure on him, and they have to find ways to alleviate that pressure a little bit, get some other guys involved. That's the biggest thing. Their offense just looks flat sometimes, and it can just be a little too head on, just attacking the paint, like you said earlier, and not finding some good sets to utilize their bigs or some of these wing players. And Bridges is a great case here. He can run sets, he can handle the ball, he can create his own shot, he can do a lot of different things. And there were just too many times I thought they really helped the Celtics out in this matchup where he's just in the corner. They're not concerned about him in the corner because he shot 31% from three in this matchup. They're willing to let him take some tough twos if he does end up dribbling in. So, you're ignoring Hart and you're almost ignoring Bridges too. And you're still have the paint packed and guys are just driving right into it for the Knicks. So, just from a Celtics perspective, you're watching that going, wow, these guys just can't win. And every single game, that's how I felt watching, especially after the first game blow. It was like, wow, the Celtics are down right now, but the Knicks aren't going to close this out. And I don't have much faith in that Knicks team. And I think everyone across the board here in Boston has said that Knicks team last year was scarier than this one, which is
Mm.
crazy to think about because it was not a more talented team. And I think we're all anticipating that East Finals matchup before the roster broke down with the injuries. And we were anticipating a tough series. Like I probably would have been thinking that one goes six. And the Celtics obviously didn't go six in any series last year. So not to say that they shouldn't have done that trade or both trades. I think that's a debate for a different day here, but it does speak to the fact that they haven't made the most of this roster because it's certainly, I would say, one of the 5 or 6 most talented rosters in the league.
Absolutely. And salute to Knicks Nation. Thank you all for tuning in for another. Wow, going to go off the rail. Losing my train of thought here. We're just having a good conversation. Welcome back to another Game of the Week preview. With me on the other side is my guy Bobby Manning. You can go catch him over at the Garden Report. All right, that's his show over there, and he covers the Celtics and the NBA for Celtics CLNS and CLNS Media. So make sure to go check him out. Make sure to hit that thumbs up button for your boys. Make sure to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already done so. Make sure to support our sponsor, Underdog Fantasy. Use that promo code KFTV to get up to $1,000 in instant bonus cash and a free pick. People, let me tell you about Underdog Fantasy real quick. I love using it. I like to think I know a little bit more about sports than, what Underdog is telling me. So the cool thing is you can go create a ticket between 2 to 8 players. You can mix and match amongst all sports. And all you got to do is just choose higher or lower on any statistical category. So, look, we're going to have, the Celtics and the Knicks here. Magic Brunson's going to get, let's say, 26 and a half, as can he score higher or lower than those points? I'd probably go higher just based on what we saw him do against the Detroit Pistons. I mean, he had a 40-point closeout, people. So, of course, I'm going to go choose higher than that. And that's all you got to do is just choose higher and lower for all stats. And now the cool thing is that you can either go all in and get a big return, or you can go the insured route and say, hey, I believe or was it like 3 out of 6 are going to go right, 4 out of 6 are going to go right, and you'll still get some money in return. So that's one way that you can use Underdog Fantasy. And then the other side, put on your GM cap. Go do some daily fantasy drafts. Go compete with your friends or a bunch of randos and see if you got what it takes to go win and get some cash over there. So make sure to support our sponsor, Underdog Fantasy. Use that promo code KFTV to get up to $1,000 in instant bonus cash and a free pick. All right, Bobby. Just had to do, gotta promote the sponsor over here. But let's get close to wrapping
For
this thing
sure.
up, man. You talk about guys that got to help in this series. You talk about Bridges being in the corner, even OG being in the corner. There's one guy I'm looking at, man, in this series who's got to help Brunson, no question about it, and that is one Karl Anthony Towns. And to me, I think the big key matchup here is Karl Anthony Towns going against Kristaps Porzingis. So for Cat, we know, well, the whole point of going to get Karl Anthony Towns is because Nick saw what the Celtics could do with a stretch five, and they're like, we got to do the same thing. So you go out there, go get Karl Anthony Towns, one of the highest paid bigs in the league. And, you know, last 2 games against Detroit, can't be scoring under 15 points, my man. You got to go out there and go help Brunson. I know we can all debate saying, hey, Brunson was really, handling the rock a little too much, putting up a little too many shots, didn't really look for Cat. Cat's also got to go demand the ball, too. Coach is also got to design some plays for him as well. But in this matchup, that's the whole point why you got Karl Anthony Towns. He is such an efficient and effective scorer. He has to go be that bona fide second option, okay? Brunson could go create for himself. Towns needs to be set up a little bit more, but that's who I'm expecting to step up in this matchup because, look, we already know what the two Jays are going to do for the Celtics. We know that KP is just going to let it fly from downtown and he can knock them down at a high rate. And if he's doing that, it's going to get out of hand. It's certainly going to get out of hand. And that's, like I said, why you brought Karl Anthony Towns in here. Not only because he can score around the rim effectively, but because he is also one of the best shooting bigs from three. And so in this matchup, to match what KP is doing, I'm looking at Karl Anthony Towns to go be that true second option in this matchup. Bobby, what do you think about that key matchup?
I think that's the whole ball game. And when you think of Porzingis, he shot 13 threes in that last game, hits 8 of them, and you love the looks he got long behind the line there. I think if you can recreate those, if you're the Knicks, that's golden. And I'm sure there'll be some people who hate threes who are like 13-3, but I think in this matchup with what you need, that would be the greatest thing in the world for the Knicks if they could create that many threes for Towns here and figure out ways to get their 3-point number up overall. And I think he's the best shooter on the roster, right?
Yeah, I would
So
say yeah. I mean,
why
look,
not?
he knocks him down. He knocks down threes like they're free throws.
Yeah, they're effortless. So yeah, there's some similarities there between Porzingis and Towns' impact. So the fact that you're gonna have Porzingis shooting 13 threes and Towns 2 on many nights here in this match, that just can't happen.
Yeah,
Celtics are switching, they're doing some stuff to prevent that, but there has to be more opportunities, even if it's not 13 there. So yeah, getting him involved and getting him involved in the right place is going to be so crucial for New York.
absolutely, man. And so Towns has just got to be that guy. KP, we know what KP, as I said, is going to do. And then, I mean, we could talk about Bridges and OG. I mean, like everybody on this roster, right? I mean, you mentioned it as, it's a little underwhelming in how these guys are utilized, but uh, it's got to be a full-on effort, man, from the starting five. They got to do what they did against the Pistons, I believe, in game 3 or 4. It was one of them where, Brunson and Towns both had 30 apiece, and then McCall and OG both had 20, and they barely came out of that one. I think they won by 2 points. And so if that's what you got to do just to win by 2 points, like
Their
we're going to need a
starters
lot.
lost their minutes in that first round.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
and it's tough, man. And I know like it's tough. That's what's so tough about this team, man. It's that even though they lost those minutes in that first round and they still won a game where by 2 points with that starting five putting up as many points, everyone's gonna have to take it up another notch, man. Especially if the bench is not gonna help. And look, I'm looking at Deuce McBride in this matchup too. He's not my X factor just because he's been struggling a lot, but he can certainly swing a series because I know Pritchard is going to be that guy who's also putting up shots. And while McBride defensively is always fine, the shooting has just been woeful in the first round. And I feel like the in and out of the lineup, the injuries he dealt with this regular season, he's got to be strong in this one too. Because if we don't have another guy off the bench that could just relieve somebody, then it's really going to be a difficult matchup for the Knicks against the Celtics.
Yeah, I thought he got some good looks too in this matchup, and the Celtics just made it tough. Like that's the whole story. There is every shot the Knicks got was difficult, and again, they're capable of hitting those. But over a course of a long series, if the Celtics are getting easier looks, if the Knicks are getting tougher looks, you know how that's gonna go. So yeah, there is a level of offensive ingenuity that I think the Celtics achieved in this matchup that you just didn't see from that Knicks side. And it is about involving everybody. It is about having multiple creators, which I think is probably the biggest advantage in this series for Boston is Holiday can run a set, White can run a set. Those guys can all attack a Brunson if they have them lined up. And, they can all attack a Towns if they have them lined up too. And that was probably the biggest killer on the other end is that there's multiple targets the Celtics can go at with the Knicks defense. And that to me, to go back to the stuff I said earlier in the show, is where Robinson comes into play because I think
Mm.
he just steals some of that up. I think he gives them more possibilities on that end. And it'll just make it a little more difficult. Before we talk about the Knicks winning this series or going 6 or 7 or any of that stuff, they just got to get to a point where they can compete in these games. It give me a break. Like that's where they should be in all these games. There should not be any blowouts in this series. This should not be an uncompetitive series, just when you're looking at what they have here. And if it is, that's a big problem. I think it's going to be in spots. I think it's going to be, again, I've said a dominant Celtics win in this series, just based off what I've watched so far. I haven't seen anything to make me think it's going to go in a different direction here yet, but it's possible. Things can change in the playoffs, things can change over the course of this series. And I was saying it on my show too. Like, I'm not just sitting here waving the Celtics pom pom saying Celtics in 4. That's just what it looks like to me. I said
Mm.
Celtics in 6 last series because that's what it looked like to me then. I thought the Magic were going to be really difficult, and they ended up being that, even though it didn't go 6. So, that's kind of, I hope people see that I'm fair with that. Like, this is just what I'm seeing right now. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. And I certainly think there's a path to me being wrong there, but that is my best guess in this series is that the Celtics, with what they're able to do on both ends of the floor, are going to be able to dominate this thing. And now I do think the games will be closer than what we watched in the regular season. I think the Knicks have enough to do that. But can they close out a game? It will be a lot on Brunson. It will be a lot on figuring out Towns how to free him up, and maybe getting a third contributor that we're not thinking about right now. But the Celtics have a lot of options and a lot of stuff to account for. I remember I asked Josh Hart earlier in the year, why can't you beat this team? What makes it so tough? And he was just like, look at all the guys you have to account for: Hauser, Pritchard, Cornette, Holiday, White, and that's before you even get to the stars. So there's a lot. There's a lot they have to account for. There's a lot of minutes they're playing. There's a lot of load that the stars are shouldering on this team, and you just wonder if it catches it up to them a little bit, especially after a long Detroit series.
Yeah, and let's get into it right now. Let's close this thing out. Let's talk about our predictions for how long the series is going to go. What is your actual prediction? Is it four or is it five?
It's four. It's four.
Wow. Yikes.
Yeah. I
Oof.
just that last game, like the Knicks had a lead throughout. Things were going their way. The Celtics really didn't need it, and they still won it. And that to me was like, wow, that's where this thing's going, huh? And I can't believe it because, I actually want to go back and watch our show from the beginning of the year to see what we thought this was going to look like then because it wasn't this, for either of us. I don't think either of us that we thought there were going to be some competition. I'm sure we thought there was going to be some real battles between these two. I thought the Knicks would probably be the biggest threat to the Celtics in the East this year, but it hasn't been that. Cleveland looks like that. Indiana looks like that again. They give them some trouble, and Orlando just gave them a really good shot. So can the Knicks do that? Can they really push this team? I think they're capable of it, but I have to see it. I can't believe it until I see it.
I think, all right, this is, whew, here we go. So I think the Knicks, after
Man,
going against,
if the Knicks get swept, it's not going to be a pretty sight.
if the Knicks get swept, all right, let me answer that before I give you my prediction. If the Knicks get swept, there is some massive overhaul. I think the coach is gone. I think one of the trades that you made is going to be changed, whether that be, I think it might have to be Bridges. If that were the case, I don't see Towns being traded. I know for him, just based on that contract, I don't know anybody that would want to take that contract on based on like the position that he plays. I don't see him getting moved, but I would see Bridges getting moved. OG could potentially get moved, although I don't think they should move OG. I'm just thinking about what do you get in return, right? As the Knicks. So
Maybe Barrett quickly
oh my
ran.
God, here we go. I much love look, man. When that trade happened, I did not know OG actually had that offensive game. I would say that
He's been good. He's been
he's been
good.
good, and so like, look, if it will be dark if the Knicks get swept because you did this whole team, you created this whole team to compete with the team you're now going against. But I'll say this: I think after playing Detroit, they have gotten a little bit tougher. I think they realize like I think with this little bit of rest, they do realize that they can't go out there and be as loosey goosey as they were playing the Pistons. And,
That's the perfect way to
you
describe it.
know,
They just kept keeping the Pistons in
yeah.
it.
And I think they've learned from that. As you mentioned, Hart has talked about being like accounting for all these guys. And I think we're going to get a little bit more of a competitive series than we've gotten throughout the regular season. And that's kind of why I think the Knicks are actually going to step this thing up and take it seven. I actually do believe that
Seven.
yeah, I think they're going to step it up and take it seven. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong, but I do think that the Knicks are going to take this. I think there are going to be some games where we'll see. We're going to get some
So
shocking
they lose in
games.
seven?
I don't know what's going to happen in game seven, man. But
It will
I'm
be
going
in
to have to go. I'm going to
Boston.
have to go with my heart, man. I'm going to have to go with my Knicks heart. So I'm going to have to go Knicks in seven in this one.
Last time Celtics were in a game seven, they did lose to Miami 2 years ago.
I'm going to have to go Knicks in seven, man. I'm going to go. I'm going to go with my heart in this one. Got to go for the team that I root.
Hey,
Um,
again, we said coming into this year, this team was built to compete with Boston. So maybe that'll actually pan out now that it's playoff time. But something's going to have to change. I think they could catch some breaks here. Again, let's see what Holiday's looking like in this series. Let's
and
see
I
how
think that's
Brown
the big thing.
progresses. Yeah, and I think they have to go and steal game one. Like they're coming out of that last series with some momentum. Brunson's probably hot. There's a lot of stuff I think if you're catching a Boston team off guard that does look at this as a matchup that they dominate throughout the course of the year. You have to catch them in that game one and really make a statement immediately, or I think you don't have a chance to win this series. So it's a big one on Monday, and Celtics have to defend that home court. Knicks have to go in there and steal that game. Really, I think pour everything into that just to be able to get ahead in this series because no one's even pushed the Celtics to six over these last 2 years. So getting a game one puts you on the path to doing that, and I think really gives you a much better chance of extending this series rather than going down 0-2 and saying, "Oh, we're just going to win at MSG." Like I don't think that's going to be the path.
That if you go down 0-2 in this series, it's going to be a steep hill to climb, steep mountain to climb. Honestly, it's not even a hill; it's just going to be a steep mountain. But hey, look, I think, like I said, I think with these two teams and how they just competed, man, like between Detroit and the Knicks, that is, I feel like the Knicks are coming out this one being like, all right, we should have taken it a little bit more seriously. We're really on their P's and Q's. We got to be it for this because they already know what the Celtics are about. They can't do what you did against Boston because if you do what you did against Boston, then you're talking about what's about to happen. Then what you said is going to happen, which is a 4-game sweep because you can't make any mistake against the team.
We didn't mention Tatum somehow much. Maybe we did here or
Look,
there,
man,
but
look. I didn't really talk about Brunson that much either. I mean, look,
yeah, we
Tatum
were
is
in the
just
weeds. Those
yeah. I
two
mean,
guys are hot right now. And you know what? Sometimes it does just come down to the stars, right? Who's playing better, who's able to outwill the other. Because, Tatum wasn't great last postseason, right? This postseason, after that injury, he's been out of this world. Brunson, maybe last year you say that guy has the edge in a series like that, the way Tatum was playing. But right now, I think that's an uphill battle to climb. And, he's capable of it. You just saw the 40. You just saw the crunch time performance in particular. And I think that's where the Knicks could maybe gain an edge in this series too, is putting themselves in those positions to have him hit those shots. But it will be a lot on Brunson here because you do have a guy on the other side doing what he's doing as well.
yeah, it's gonna be a tough one, man. Bobby, I appreciate you coming through as always, man, and previewing this game. Please let the listeners know where they can find you. If you got any work up and coming, we should be on the lookout for.
Yeah, we got a post-game show too, of course, the Garden Report. We're live after every game, so I want to see some Knicks fans in there. I want to see some back and forth. I want to see some banter in there. I'm interested to see who's in the Gardens in both games. I want to see who's in each other's chats during this series because I know there's a lot of great Knicks content over on this side, but we got the Celtics covered over on ours, so come join us. We'll be happy to have you. Check in, see what you're thinking throughout these games, and a lot of off-day content too over there. Try and do a show every day during these series, so we'll always be live on CLNS Media's YouTube channel as well as Celtics All Access YouTube channel. CLNSmedia.com is where you can find my writing, as well as occasionally over at Boston Sports Journal and Celtics blog. So yeah, we're busy this time of year to say the least, and we'll be down in New York too. If you're down there at the Garden, keep an eye out for us.
All right, man, and you heard it, man. So make sure to go give Bobby a follow. He does great work. Make sure to go give him a follow. And hey, go look. We get Celtics fans. Look, even after the Pistons games, we had Celtics fans in our chat just saying, "We're ready. We're ready. We're there."
We're ready.
I saw Clover's just hopping in. I was like, "Wow, you guys are not even after not 1 second. Your fan base is in there." So I know they're raring for this one, man. It's gonna be a good one. Boston, New York. You always know it's a good matchup when it's Boston, New York. Bobby, appreciate you coming through as always. And to all of Knicks Nation, even Celtics Nation out there that's tapping in, make sure to hit that thumbs up button for your boys. Make sure to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already done so. Make sure to support our sponsor, Underdog Fantasy. Use that promo code KFTV to get up to $1,000 in instant bonus cash and a free pick. And to everybody, don't forget, if you're in New York, go to the Ainsworth, all right? 5:30 sharp. Get through. We got DJ Eric L. Beats on the ones and twos. As always, look, you're going to have drinks. There's going to be live game action. You're going to hear all the sounds from the game. And then once it's a commercial break, the music will be playing. So make sure to go check in. Go be with the Orange and Blue Nation over there. You know how KFTV does, man, when it comes to watch parties. So make sure to go tap in over there. Make sure to go follow our newsletter as well to get all the updates for watch parties. You get great articles over there for all the video, for all the content that's dropping, also for all the merch, as well as all of our sponsors. So make sure to go sign up over there as well, and just to stay tapped in with any new moves that we're making. And look, you already know what's going to be happening. We're going to have play-by-play on Monday and post-game, so make sure to stay locked in. All right, everybody, appreciate your time. We out.